An emperor must make decisive decisions to ensure his empire does not falter. It is an important obligation to the people and his army so that the empire may prosper. But not every man is perfect, and many fall into the desires of wealth or power, while others reign for too little to truly shine. Yet some tainted emperors did still leave a positive contribution to the empire, and so let us begin with the emperor, who needs no introduction. Augustus achieved many remarkable things in his long reign. The ultimate factor that summarized him was the establishment of the Pax Romana, a period of peace, stability, and prosperity, which continued for the next 2 centuries. His reluctant successor, Tiberius, was not a favorite amongst the people and grew increasingly reclusive. However, his frugal economic policies allowed the empire to store a vast surplus of 3 billion sesterces. Caligula was the first of the bad apples to rule Rome. His 4-year-long reign was filled with controversy, yet he did begin the construction of 2 aqueducts for Rome, which significantly improved the city's water supply. Claudius was seen as someone who would be terrible in any position of power due to his disability, yet he proved to be a significant leader. He implemented significant reforms to the judicial system, actively trying cases and improving the administration of justice. Nero is remembered as a cruel and narcissistic emperor, particularly due to the widespread belief that he instigated the Great Fire to clear lands for his lavish new palace, the Domus Aurea. In its aftermath, however, he initiated a relief effort for the ones who were victims of the fire by making stricter urban regulations on the city's layout, making sure streets are wider, having fire breaks, and fireproof material used for external walls. The tumultuous year of the 4 emperors brought us emperors who ruled for a brief period of time. Some of these emperors did not have a positive impact on the empire from now on, so I will focus on the most neutral accomplishment of their reign. Galba was an old, strict man, whose brief tenure was marked by seeking out corruption in the imperial bureaucracy by removing corrupt officials. Otho dreamed big and hoped to become an heir of Galba, but Galba's choice of Piso as his chosen heir made Otho arrange an assassination. With blood on his hands, the best thing he ironically did was commit suicide after the Battle of Bedrachum against Vitellius's forces to stop the civil war from taking more Roman lives. The third emperor of the year, Vitellius, was known as a glutton who would hold banquets and parties. He only reigned for 8 months, but did enact an expansion of the civil service, broadening the imperial administration so that men of the equestrian class could serve in administrative roles. Finally, Vespasian would take control after the death of Vitellius, who brought peace back to Rome. He was a dignified man. His accomplishments were numerous. The construction of the Flavian Amphitheatre, known today as the Colosseum, remains his most iconic achievement. His eldest son, Titus, would succeed him, whose character was very much benevolent. The catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 caused him to organize relief efforts, donating large sums of the imperial treasury and ensuring the land of deceased individuals without heirs was redistributed to those who survived. The more notorious son of Vespasian, Domitian, was seen as the black sheep of the family, yet he was one of the very few emperors with the intent to reverse the debasement of the coin and so improve the monetary system. He was successful in increasing the metal value of the denarius and aureus, and so stabilizing the currency and controlling inflation for a period. Nerva was elevated in 96, ushering in the golden period of the 5 good emperors. Although he ruled briefly, he instituted the Alimenta program, a welfare system set up to support orphans and poor children throughout Italy. One of the greatest emperors, Trajan, was regarded as a military hero. His decisive campaigns in Dacia and the East expanded the empire to its greatest territorial extent. Hadrian succeeded his cousin and made sure to visit every province of the empire as he wished to intervene in imperial and provincial affairs. While visiting Britain, he would complete a historical building project, the Hadrian Wall, which marked the northern limit of Britannia. Antoninus Pius, although old, would reign for 23 years. His long reign saw no major conflicts arise during his time in the empire. The last good emperor was the philosophical emperor Marcus Aurelius, who co-ruled with his adopted brother Verus. Aurelius successfully defended the Danube frontier against persistent Germanic invasions in his Marcomannic Wars. His brother Lucius Verus had a much different lifestyle and preferred to indulge in many pleasures and games. He did, however, win against the Parthians in the Parthian War, with his generals achieving great victories. The chain of good emperors was broken, with Aurelius's biggest mistake ascending his biological son, Commodus. Even philosophers make mistakes. There's like nothing good about Commodus. In fact, the only thing he achieved was negotiating a peace settlement to end the Marcomannic Wars, but the deal was unfavorable, and it just goes from worse to catastrophic from here. So buckle up. We have 4 emperors in a year, so now it's time for 5. Pertinax was elevated by the Praetorian Guard. Following Commodus's assassination, he hoped to reform the empire and eliminate corruption by curbing the Praetorian Guards, who by now understood they could abuse their power. This led to his demise, as they would storm the palace and cut him down. Next, something unbelievable would happen. The empire would be sold to the highest bidder, which would be Didius Julianus. He quite literally accomplished nothing, as his rule was short. The best I can say about him is that he made the Praetorian Guards do some military drills, and they were still undertrained. The other 3 contender emperors were Septimius Severus, Claudius Albinus, and Pescennius Niger, of whom the first came out victorious. Severus was the first Roman emperor to station some of the imperial army in Italy. He reformed the military, increasing the soldiers' pay from 300 to 400 denarii, and increasing the legion size from 30 to 33, while also stationing some of the army in Italy as central reserve units if they were needed to be sent anywhere. His sons, Caracalla and Gall, would co-rule for 2 years before Gall was killed, and Caracalla ruled alone. Caracalla issued the Constitutio Antoniniana in 212, an edict granting Roman citizenship to nearly all freeborn inhabitants of the empire. Macrinus would become the first emperor to never set foot in Rome, since he was killed before he could even make it back. His sole achievement was a negotiated peace treaty with the Parthians, which had a high cost of indemnity, another unfavorable deal called a déjà vu. Elagabalus would reign after him, and he was an interesting figure of Roman history due to his controversial lifestyle. He accomplished little, but he did try introducing Eastern religious practices and rituals into Rome by promoting his Syrian sun god, El-Gabal. Alexander would become the youngest emperor at the age of just 13. He supported a significant legal reform, allowing soldiers who were previously barred from marriage the right to appoint heirs in their wills and to free slaves. The closest the empire came to falling was during the crisis of the 3rd century. Maximinus Thrax would begin ruling during the crisis and successfully defeat Germanic enemies like the Alemanni, earning him the title Germanicus Maximus. It was also in 238 that the year of the 6 emperors took place. Gordian I and II rebelled against Emperor Maximinus Thrax, receiving support from the Senate, which opposed his rule. When the revolt collapsed, the Senate found itself in great jeopardy. Maximinus was furious and marched on Rome, so the Senate elevated Pupienus and Balbinus to stop the barbarian. Pupienus, a seasoned general, led the military campaign to defeat Maximinus Thrax, who was besieging Aquileia. Balbinus stayed in the capital to deal with all current affairs and ensure support from the Roman provinces. The final ruler in 238 was Gordian III, who ruled for 6 years. He successfully campaigned against the Sassanid Persians along his Praetorian prefect, Timositheus, temporarily securing the eastern frontier. Philip the Arab was ethnically Arab and asserted to have been a Christian. His reign coincided with the 1000th anniversary of the founding of Rome, with the secular games. The festivities were magnificent. Decius, who strongly opposed the Christians, sponsored many building projects in Rome, including the Baths of Decius. Trebonianus Gallus. Gallus made peace with the Goths on unfavorable terms that let them keep the captives and plunder. In addition, They would be paid an annual subsidy. Aemilianus ruled for a mere 2 months and achieved nothing in his reign. So the best he did was promise to fight for the empire in Thrace and against Persia, and to relinquish his power to the Senate. Yeah, this period sucks. Valerian would be another persecutor of Christians. He was the first to be captured by a foreign enemy and humiliated. He addressed the grave problems that faced them in both the east and the west of the empire by splitting responsibility on a geographical basis with his son Gallienus as co-emperor, a premonition of the future fate of Rome. His son, Gallienus, would rule for 15 years, the longest in half a century. He reformed the army, creating a more mobile cavalry force, the comitatenses, and opening military command positions to non-senators, professionalizing the officer corps. Claudius Gothicus won a decisive victory at the Battle of Nisus against the Goths, earning his name and providing a crucial respite from the Gothic invasions. Quintilius took over after his brother's death, and did not have a chance to shine since he ruled for such a brief time. Surviving Roman records consider Quintilius a moderate and capable emperor, and that is it, really. Now, drumroll please. Aurelian accomplished many feats during his 5-year reign, which changed the course of the empire dramatically. He reunited the shattered empire, which was controlled in the east by the broken off Palmyrene Empire, and reconquered the Gallic Empire in the west. Tacitus would rule after the brutal and senseless assassination of Aurelian, inflicting a defeat on Gothic and Scythian raiders in Asia Minor, continuing the work of stabilizing the frontiers. Florian continued his half-brother's campaign, briefly maintaining continuity and Roman authority in the east. Probus cleared Gaul of Germanic invaders and settled many barbarians on depopulated Roman lands, aiding economic recovery. Carus launched a successful invasion of Sassanid Persia, capturing the capital Ctesiphon. Carinus won a significant victory against the Germanic tribes on the Danube, securing that frontier for a time. Numerian's peaceful retreat from Persia preserved his father Carus's land gains without major losses. We blitzed through the 1st century crisis and entered the Dominata period, which starts with Diocletian. He created the Tetrarchy, a system of 4 rulers that stabilized the empire and allowed for major administrative, military, and economic reforms. Maximian, the Western Augustus, defended the Rhine frontier and suppressed major revolts in Gaul and Africa, securing the west for Diocletian. Constantius Chlorus, Caesar to Maximian, then Augustus in the west, father of Constantine the Great, successfully recovered Britain from the usurper Carausius. Galerius, who was Augustus in the east, was a fierce persecutor of Christians. He was a capable general who won victories against the Sassanid Persians. Severus II ruled shortly with Constantine, but spent most of his time fighting a civil war against the usurper Maxentius. His attempt to stop the revolt of Maxentius is unfortunately the best he did, and yeah, he did fail, but only because Severus's men abandoned him while besieging Rome. Maxentius was a usurper who, although authorized by the Senate, was not seen as an emperor by the other emperors. He initiated the construction of the vast Basilica Nova, the largest building in the Roman Forum, and a massive villa and circus complex on the Via Appia. Licinius contributed with the co-issuing of the Edict of Milan in 313, which legalized Christianity across the Roman Empire and mandated tolerance for all religions, ended the Great Persecution. Maximinus Daza attempted to remodel the pagan cult to compete with the Christian church, and engage in public works and philanthropy to promote traditional Roman religion. Constantine the Great founded Constantinople, creating a new capital that would become the center of the Eastern Roman Empire for over 1,000 years. Constantine II was greedy, since after the elimination of the cousins, he gained little territory compared to his younger brothers. As Augustus, he literally did nothing good, so the best thing he did was fail the invasion of Italy, as he was killed and Constans absorbed the territory. Yeah, Constantine too did not live up to his father's name. Constans successfully defended the Danube frontier and visited Britain, the last legitimate emperor to visit the island. Constantius II fortified the eastern frontier and fought the Sassanid Persians to a stalemate, preserving the empire's territory. Julian the Apostate was nicknamed so as he attempted to restore traditional Roman pagan views. He implemented significant fiscal reforms aimed at reducing corruption and cutting the extravagant costs of the imperial court. Jovian extricated the Roman army from a disastrous situation in Persia after Julian's death, saving it from annihilation. Valentinian was a strong military emperor who vigorously fortified and defended the Rhine and Danube frontiers against Germanic invasions. Valens completed the Aqueductus Valentis, Valens Aqueduct in Constantinople, a crucial piece of infrastructure that supplied the city with water for centuries. Gratian refused the pagan title of Pontifex Maximus, advancing Christianity's role in the state. Magnus Maximus. What's interesting about him is that in Wales, he is a significant figure in famous tales like the Dream of Maxen Wledig. As a ruler, he established a court at Trier, forging alliances with Frankish and Alemannic leaders to stabilize the Rhine frontier. Valentinian II did not accomplish much due to his young age. He did try to sack Arbogast, but his notice was disdainfully thrown to the ground. Theodosius was instrumental in establishing the Nicene Creed as the orthodox doctrine for Nicene Christianity. Honorius is an emperor who is badly remembered. He was also the first, with his brother, to rule the empire after its ultimate split in 395. Although Honorius ruled for so long, he accomplished little. The only viable thing he did was abandon Britain to Germanic invasions as Rome could not defend itself. Joannes was elevated as emperor following no announcement of a Western emperor by Theodosius II. His reign was unfortunate as he was met with a disagreement of his elevation as Augustus, and would be deposed by Theodosius. But I suppose his best achievement was entrusting his promising follower, Aetius, with an important mission to seek military help from the Huns. Valentinian III, with Pope Leo, issued a decree that granted the Bishop of Rome supremacy over provincial churches. Petronius Maximus literally had nothing good going on, so the best thing he did was make the future Emperor Avitus the magister militum. Avitus did not do much, but he secured a temporary winter truce with the Vandals. Majorian, the last effective Western emperor, reconquered much of Gaul and Spain from barbarian tribes and planned to recover North Africa. These last few emperors I would not even call emperors, since they were puppets of Ricimer. Libius Severus was one of these shadow emperors, and he quite literally achieved nothing. He ruled only Italy, and after the death of Aegidius, Gaul returned to the emperor's sphere of influence for a brief time. Anthemius had a good diplomatic relationship with the Eastern Empire. For example, Anthemius is the last Western emperor to be recorded in an Eastern law. Olybrius was the next uneventful emperor, who had nothing going on. In fact, the best I can do is a description by Ennodius, which tells us that he was a pious man who acted accordingly. Now his successor, Glycerius, at least had an accomplishment. He successfully prevented an Ostrogoth army from invading Italy by diverting them to Gaul. Julius Nepos is the penultimate emperor of the Western Roman Empire, but is regarded by some historians as the true last emperor of Rome. Due to him still being alive till 480 and not renouncing his claim to the title, he may have repelled a Visigoth attack on Italy and managed to once more reduce the Burgundians into federati. Our final emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was a kid when he was proclaimed emperor, and so the best thing he did was get deposed by Odoacer, ending the Western Roman Empire without further bloodshed, as he was allowed to retire and live till 511. The emperors of the Eastern Empire after 395 and the Byzantines will be covered together in a future video, so stay tuned.